My next guest is a South Carolina legend, a singer, songwriter, storyteller, and showman who, for the past decade, has made a unique musical mark in Nashville. After graduating as a Gamecock from the University of South Carolina, he moved to Nashville, where for over 15 years he's continued to build his songwriting, artist, and touring career. Whoa. Is that the train? That was a big one. Felt like an earthquake. Back on it. He's released 4 full-length albums, toured the U.S. and Europe as both a headliner and support act for Darius Rucker, Jewel, and others, while also writing songs for Warner Chappell Music Publishing. He's had over 50 songs recorded by other artists, including songs for Jimmy Buffett, Lady A, Imelda May, Darius Rucker, Jewel, Robert Randolph, Guy Clark, and many more. He's also the founder of Songwriters Paradise, a songwriters festival that brings together the music industry's top songwriters and performers with awe-inspiring destinations for a one-of-a-kind musical experience. What else about this guy? Patrick Davis and the Midnight Choir, his artist project. I know this dude has been hard at work in the studio as well, creating some amazing music. So be on the lookout for a couple new projects coming your way soon. So without any further ado, please help me welcome a man who I'm very proud to call a very close friend, whose silver tongue can get him in and out of trouble faster than a one-legged man in a butt-kicking contest, who plays host to more celebrities than Studio 54 on a Saturday night, a man who knows wine and drinks it like a 16th century Scottish monk in deep depression, a jet setter, a Renaissance man, and all-around good dude, the beautifully handsome and talented future governor of South Carolina, Mr. Patrick Davis.
Look at that, Jamie Kenney.
PD.
Hey, buddy.
What's up, man?
That's beautiful. You just follow me around and just tell people who I am.
Well,
all of those lies sound fucking awesome from your tongue. It's great.
It's amazing because I know you so well. I know you're truly an asshole, but I figured everybody deserves a good intro.
Yeah, that's the deal, man. I appreciate that. That was really good. What's up, buddy?
Not a lot, man.
You sound like you had a late night. I'm gonna tell you, you're talking low.
Really?
Yeah. Did you go out last night?
I think it's more that Mike put some EQ on my voice, and I think it's making me push into it a little bit.
No,
making me go low.
It was like that before. Yeah, it was.
No, we actually did go grab a nice steak last night.
Yeah,
we just did. It was kind of one of those nights where there's no occasion. We just were like, let's go get a good steak. Let's get a couple glasses of wine and maybe a couple
bottles of wine,
couple martinis.
Yeah. Okay.
I think we started with martinis and moved to wine, and so I got a little bit of the wine voice today.
Well, you sound beautiful. It sounds beautiful. Deep.
Yeah. So that it justifies the coffee this morning instead of our libations that we would typically
monkey
do.
Shoulder sounded pretty, like that description was crazy. Like a monkey, what'd you say? A monkey shovel?
Yeah, monkey shovel, monkey arm.
Yeah.
You get monkey arm, starts dangling, I guess.
It's like jackleg, like the thing that the old guys would drink the bathtub whiskey, and they'd get that thing where they'd get that weird step because it'd affect their nervous system or whatever.
Is that right?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Called jackleg. So you would actually you'd be walking and you see the people that like back in the day, you would drink some, I guess maybe it had too much of something, whatever, either the alcohol content was wrong or.
Okay.
But anyway, yeah, so exciting stuff.
They develop a weird limp in their step from whiskey?
Yeah, from drinking like bathtub whiskey, like back during Prohibition times when people were like making the shit in there.
The bathtub gin?
Yeah, basically, essentially. Yeah, which is, there's actually a great bar in Seattle named, is it Bathtub Gin? Anyway, somebody in Seattle will know. It's a really great little speakeasy. I think it's called Bath and Gin, I think is what it's called. Mm-hmm. Anyway, so, hey, buddy.
So I met you not that long ago. I met you in Cabo.
It's a really nice thing because you and I, I hope everybody out there, whoever's listening to this, they have this feeling with people. They meet them, and then they hit it off for, it's like there's something cosmic that happens where they're buddies, and you kind of forget that it wasn't long ago, and they feel like they've always been in your life, and that's kind of how I feel with you.
Yeah.
So
same, man. And I've been using this term lately, which I kind of like because I feel like it's starting to apply to a lot of different things, but the term jump the line. Mm-hmm. You'll know some people for 15, 20 years, and you're nominally close with them. Yeah. And then
you go, we should write sometime. Those guys.
And you know them. You see them a lot. And you just never. And then you meet other people, and they kind of jump the line, essentially.
Yeah,
in
cool.
2 years, you can, you just find those people.
It's a good song title.
Jump the line.
You hold that.
Well,
don't release this until we write the song, Jamie.
We were actually. I was talking about it for the name of this of a company. It just doesn't sound great. It doesn't ring great. Jump the line, but JTL rings great, but jump the line doesn't ring great. But anyway, I like that concept of I've been using it with artists too. I found that when you're developing artists that are still trying to get their situation, meaning like they're trying to get that first break where they got either a publishing deal or their music gets them a record deal or a song goes viral on Spotify, whatever it is, to get that first situation is typically the hardest thing. And then the next step is trying to keep it going. But I always tell artists that if you are in that course of development, if you are smart with the way you write, you're not just like writing with every goddamn person in the world, and you're being focused on what am I writing? Who are my people that I really resonate with? Let me find those 7-8 people. Let me find those 2-3 producers. Let me, however many it is, find those people. And if you write and are strategic with the way you create your music, you can jump the line. All these other people just take so much time developing, and they're just spinning their circles, spinning, running in circles, doing all this stuff to try to get to this goal. But if you're really focused and you work smart and you create music smart and you write smart, you can jump the line there. I mean, it's very and I've seen it with 4 or 5 acts I've kind of worked with and developed, and we've only written 11, 12 songs, and they go on the record and they break it. And other people just write 200 songs, and none of them, they've got like 1 or 2 in the batch, So,
I think it comes down to that. What you're describing is someone knowing exactly who they're trying to be or what they're trying to be. Because if you're aimless with it, it's hard to hit the bullseye. But if you actually have a focus, and I think that's where the best artists are. But anyway, what you're getting to was that's I feel like we jumped a line, as friendship wise.
So for the people that are listening, PD, talk about Cabo. So PD and I met on a writer's retreat in Cabo. So what happens is these publishing companies, they take us to these crazy destinations a lot of times to do these writing camps, and they throw a bunch of writers in one spot, and essentially they lure us with the allure of these nice destinations. But then you get there and you're just working all day. You're writing 2 songs a day, but the trade-off is you're in this beautiful surrounding, eating great meals and around the beach, swimming in the pool, drinking tequila, but you're immersed together. Yeah. And so they're actually really fun. The best part of these camps typically is the relationships.
The songs come out are pretty hit or miss, in my opinion. I mean, we've done a bunch of them over the years and stuff, but I know that the publishing houses or the record labels, they do it because they will get some copyright out of it. There'll be a number of songs. Like I think when we went that first time, it was probably 20 of us that went, maybe, or something like that. Yeah. And so you got to think if for 5 days they wrote 2 songs were written by each person, let's say, or whatever that number ends up being. Let's say 10 songs, 20 songs were written a day. It was 100 songs by the end of the time for the publisher. And it also is kind of like propaganda for the publisher because they can then use it, for leverage when they go back in to sign you and be like, remember we took you to, you remember? And you're like, yeah, but that was all recoupable.
Right. Well, it's also great marketing because you got to think when we were over there, you actually put this thing on. You were the hookup. So you put us up in this massive villa owned by the Prince of Spain at one point or something, and we're all posting on
constantly
on IG,
and everybody is
amazing,
and everybody's upset that they're not there. Yeah,
and we're posting, Warner Chapel.
Yeah,
and so Warner Chapel's sitting back in Nashville going, we're just getting flooded with these amazing,
and they can
pictures.
use that as and I mean like Ben wouldn't mind, the head of Warner wouldn't mind me saying this. It's like I get hit up about those types of things all the time, and it's because I do have a lot of those connections, I guess, and but it is the winner in it is not the songwriter. It is not the artist that's there, unless some incredible song comes out. That does happen, I guess, every now and then. But the winner is the publisher every single time, and so you have to.
Well, it helps us in the sense that I think about that particular one. I think the one I'm thinking of is we had Warner folks from L.A., New York, and Nashville. And we all just jumped in together. And I think about the relationships I made because of that. Essentially, I'm a Warner Chapel writer, so that made me more connects. I'm more connected as it essentially made me a better writer because now I have more collaborative
people that you can reach out to.
So I could, it's cool. Anyway, so PD and I met in basically in paradise.
Yes, yes.
There was free tequila flowing, the best tequila. You just literally walk out of your villa. I remember I set my studio up in this just one little area of this huge villa. And it was
it's like just so you guys understand, when he says huge villa, this is I think it's 35,000 square feet on like 5 acres on the Sea of Cortez. It's like absolutely ridiculous. It is the most ridiculous. People come to that place when they're walking down the beach, and they'll walk in and ask like, "Which resort is this?" And you're like, "It is not a resort. It is someone's house."
So when I say that
he doesn't go
villa,
to
it's like I set up in one villa in the compound. Like there are like 9 different villas, and you just kind of walk out the screen, walk out to the pool, and there's a tiki bar there loaded with the best tequila you've ever seen, and it's it's basically like
so basically though we did meet in a beautiful spot, and it was so it does I don't mean to oversell the fact that the publishers win. Everyone wins. What I was getting at was, it is a very nice, the relationship. You can make a different relationship. I've heard this. My buddy Christian is a Christian Bush songwriter, performer. He has told me before that they did some research. So he hired a team, and they figured out that people are willing to do things that are outside of their comfort zone when they're on an adventure or a vacation. He's like, think about it. Like when you're walking down the street in your hometown, there's an antique shop, and you walk past that place 100 days in a row, and you never walk in. You're on vacation, and you walk past an antique shop, and you're only in that place one day, and you walk in that antique shop.
Right.
It's like you're willing to find new music, new food, new friends, all these, new drink. And so I think that is part of it. It does expand. Travel does expand your mind. There's I can't remember the book, but it's like, it's the first page. It says, or the quote is, if not traveling is like having a book and only opening it at the first page, whatever that is. Right. And that's kind of what I feel like happened in Cabo for us, is that we had a great time, and it was like, Benny was there, Benny Burgess was there, and Devin Dawson, but it was a good crew. It was a really big crew, and it was a lot of fun. But I mean, definitely the relationship that I take from coming out of that was me and you, for sure.
Yeah.
And so yeah, it's been fun, man.
We used to take, we did probably 3 writers' retreats, just kind of for fun in Scotland, before I met you.
Oh wow.
The legendary Elena Max had a property over there, and
where would y'all go? Like Edinburgh, or like where was it in Glasgow? Where was it?
Her family had a property that was just gorgeous, and they were gracious enough to just let us invade.
That's awesome.
It was essentially a castle. She would always get upset at me for calling it a castle. She's like, "It's a manor home," and I'm like, "It has fucking turrets. It's a castle."
Yeah.
And we'd go there, and the cool part is, musicians and creatives, we're so affected by our surroundings, because we're emotional, creative, kind of feelers. So being in Scotland, you walk into this castle and there's just tartan everywhere. It's all just like, it feels like you're in the mid 14th century or something like that, and so you walk in there, and then outside it's rainy, and you look out and there's sheep across the way, across the loch, and it's just all that stuff affects how you write.
Yeah.
And so the songs that would come out of that particular retreat, they'd all be moody. We killed the syncs. Like we had so many sync licenses.
Well, same thing in Cabo. Like every song, like it was like literally, because I've taken a group. I do my Songwriters in Paradise events, and those are not necessarily. We don't write a lot of that. That's actually performances, like a music festival. But these writing retreats I've done in Bahamas with some guys, and in Cabo. And the truth is, they would be like, "Can y'all please not write any beach songs?" right. Because every song is just like, "Let's write a song about Mexico, but what tequila?" Like it's just you can't help it. It's every song. But it does. You do get a vibe. I also think that, and maybe Scotland was like this for you guys. I understand why. Like Hemingway or Tennessee Williams, or these guys would go to these places and write in these destinations that they brought out a vibe. It was like a lifestyle that you fall into, and it's like cathartic, and it makes you feel a different way. It takes you out of that comfort zone, but then all of a sudden you get into like more of a routine that is one with the world, I guess, a little bit, because it's a little more natural. It's not like Nashville where everything's so fast paced and everything. And I think Cabo has that effect in them. And it doesn't mean that great songs are written. I mean, like I don't think there's been a lot of crazy success. I think Devin Dawson wrote a song with our buddy Josh Kerr, and that was on his album there. And then we wrote a song that I wrote a song which is not me at all normally, but the little redneck kid from Alabama, the one that got in trouble for saying the wrong word.
Morgan Wallen.
Yeah, that kid. We wrote one for him. And that was written there. And I remember, but it's so good, and I do really like that song. I think it's for what it is. I think it's a great song. And
Outlaw's a great song.
Yeah, I mean, I knew that when we wrote it though, but that's not the normal there. Like I do find that usually you get into it becomes a very, like you said, moody songs in Scotland makes sense. And then like in the beach thing,
songs
it's
don't work.
all fucking beach songs.
I'm just thinking of this moment with Benny Burgess is a legend, and he also was on Outlaw, and he actually is the feature on Outlaw on the Morgan Wallen record.
And I love Ben. He's great.
And so Benny was on. I think he's been on every one I've been on down there.
Did we do two?
We did
two? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, and so it was one night. So Ben loves to smoke the weed. Everybody knows that, and it's part of
who he is.
It's been imbued into his soul. So I think Ben is like probably 33% weed himself. It's like we're all like water and guts, and he's a quarter weed. But Ben was struggling because down there you can't. The weed down there is different. It's not good, and he was struggling with finding anything to cure his.
Man, we were walking. Ben, I'm sorry, I'm telling the story, but it's fucking hysterical. Remember, I think you were there. We were walking down on the harbor, downtown Cabo. We went downtown Cabo, and we were like just going to a bar. We were like going to do some stuff, and that son of a bitch literally just walked up to the first person that looked like they might be a drug dealer, and asked them if they had. And I was like, "What are you doing, man?" I was like, "There's literally federale all around." Like I'm like, he's just like, "Bruh, gotta." He's in his. I can't even attempt to speak like it is. Yeah,
bruh.
Yeah. He's like, yo, that shit. Yeah. So, but it was funny, and he did find some, but it's probably oregano.
Well, that's the thing. Essentially. So he was struggling to get that state where he finds his most creative moments, and so he came in one night, and it was the last night of the last ride of the night, and so I think it was dark. I remember I had my setup, and the doors were open, and the ocean's right there, and you could hear the waves rolling in, and Benny was just kind of always a little off because he was trying all this different shit down in Mexico to get him this like some kind of a high to where he could get back to his kind of like normal state.
Yeah.
He walks in and he's so into this weird state. He walks in, he's kind of like, I don't know if he's high or if he's who knows what it was, but he was just out there. And it was, I can't remember the other writers, but he walks in and he goes, he's just sitting in there for a while. He goes, Kenney, I love that beat you just did. I love those chords. Play those chords again. Kind of played them. He goes, keep playing that. I got something. Check that. Put the mic up. He walks up the mic and we're all just like sitting back going, oh man, Burgess, he's brilliant. This is going to be amazing. He gets up. He just lets me play the riff for like 16 measures. He's just on the mic. And all of a sudden he's just like, he goes, waves, 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 waves. Waves, 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 waves. And he steps back. He's like, looks at us like, how about that? And I was like, well, that took a lot to come up with that, huh? The doors are open. You're hearing the waves. And man, God, you are creative.
You're a genius, man.
And we all just died. We're like, that's what you have?
Yeah.
You like prepped us for this big thing.
He was on like, so much. I'm sure. Who knows what he'd been smoking?
Waves.
I've got
I still got that track, man. It's
you should play that at the end of this. Next time when he's on here, you should just play that at the start of the interview.
It actually was kind of cool. It'll never go anywhere because it's not that cool, but it had a vibe.
In Cabo is my Sorrows of Paradise. We do a Sip Cabo every year in December, and I won't say the name, but I have a friend that partakes in, he'll find drugs every now and then. There'll be party favors, and he was down there trying to find the powder stuff. And we didn't, I didn't know about this. I heard about this after, and there's a guy, he buys some on the beach in Cabo, and apparently he tries to do it, and it does nothing to him. And he's like, this is fucking, this is cocaine. And he goes back to the same guy, and the guy's like, oh, I'm sorry, I gave you the wrong stuff, right? And he gives him another bag of it, and he does that, nothing happens. And he goes back to the guy again. He's like, He's like, bro, he's like, I've done a lot of this in my life. He's like, I know what this is supposed to do. So he goes and he gets, the guy goes, hey, here's what you got to do. You got to go across the street and you got to find Dynamite. The guy's name is Dynamite. He's going to hook you up with the right stuff, right? Yeah. So he goes across, gets another, this is over the course of a week, right? So he goes over, gets another one. And then nothing happens again. And he goes back home here to Nashville, and apparently he's like, he can't, his resting heartbeat is like 160 or something. He can't, for like a week, he can't, he's just sweating all the time. And he goes to the doctor, and the doctor's like, so what happened here? And he's like, Doc, I'm not gonna lie to you. Okay, I went to Mexico. I tried to get some cocaine. And the doctor goes, what were you? And he goes, well, this is pretty much seems like you might have been snorting straight caffeine pills for the past week.
Oh,
and so it's going to take you a while to calm down.
Oh my God, he was snorting caffeine.
So we essentially, every time we talk to him, like, you see, Dynamite, you're going to go down and see Dynamite? He gets like, fuck Dynamite, man.
Oh my goodness.
And I'm not, no one should do drugs. It's terrible. But it's just still, it's funny. Not in Mexico. Don't do drugs in Mexico.
No, sure. It's like, that is the most insane.
The funniest part of that is he kept going back to the same person expecting a different
right, and of
outcome.
Course, I guarantee he didn't get a refund.
Dynamite. Oh, Dynamite had the real stuff. And I love the story of, man, I've done a lot of this. This is when it's supposed to do.
Trust me, I know.
It's
I know
like Ben.
brand.
Ben's like, hey man, this is supposed to do something different. But anyway, Cabo, you guys. But songwriting retreats, man, I do think that they are valuable. I think that the relationships, like, I never would have met you if I hadn't pulled that together. And so shout out to my boy Scott for letting me use the compound down there. And but that's it's just it does take you to a different place, literally and figuratively. I mean, you go somewhere different. Like you're willing. I love to travel. You know this about me. I travel all the time when possible, and my Songwriters in Paradise events are literally because I love to travel, love to drink, great drinks, great food, all that stuff, and experiences. And without that trip, I would never met you. We wouldn't be sitting here. I wouldn't be at Never Never right now.
Speaking of actually, it doesn't really have anything to do with Songwriters in Paradise, but one of the things that is unique about you is you always have very, I don't know, successful / wealthy / famous people around you, and you somehow always endear yourself to them. And what I love about that is, I think typically people are really, really, whether it's you like playing catch with Dan Marino or golfing with Jim Furyk or what, people are successful for a reason. Mm-hmm. But when people are great at something, typically when you pull back the curtain, you're like, okay, that's why. That's why. So between you and athletes and famous musicians and vineyard owners and hedge fund managers, and you've always, and politicians, hey Jamie, I gotta go. I'm gonna have lunch with the governor of South Carolina, because you've always got people in your life like that. That's kind of one of your gifts, is you know how to help people, and you support them, and you give to them, and you help people get to where they want to go, and you're very generous like that. So I think people like that about you. So what are some of the qualities when you've been around these people who are inordinately successful or great at what they do or famous, or what are some of the qualities that are there any that you've noticed that are consistent common denominators in those people that you've looked and said, oh, that's why they made their money. That's why they're this, or. Well,
I mean, sometimes it's just luck. I mean, like, sure. Be honest, but no, I mean, I think the number one priority for me, any friend of mine, that's why we're buddies, is kindness. Mm-hmm. Being kind, across the board, and all the people that that I am actually close to, like, regardless of their financial or even social status or anything like that. I only look for, as I've gotten older, they have to be kind. Like, it's just, life's way too fucking short, and most of the people that I'm close to that are successful, I'm close to them because we have a symbiotic relationship that's a friendship way before anything else. But I know when I meet those people that are like like if I have a meeting with somebody that I just happen to be a contact with, not necessarily close friends with. I mean, I do think the thing that for most of the people is their work ethic, is they're focused on what they do and they do it all the time, and that's all they, they're very, very good at it. It's like they figured out I don't know about like athletes. A lot of them are just Jim Furyk's a dear friend. We had, Tabitha had his wife. We had a private thing here when they were in town, and his daughter goes to school here, and wonderful people. So and they're like you. They jumped the line. I didn't meet those guys until like probably 7 or 8 years ago. And it's probably like if we're hanging out, someone will meet us and they'll be like, "Oh, you guys must have grown up together," And that's how it is with Jim and Tabitha. They'll be like, y'all known each other forever?" And I'm like, "No, we just met randomly, but we just hit it off." And but I find with Jim, it's and with great musicians, and this, like, yes, you have to be great at it, or you have to maybe you're a little ahead of other people in terms of like your musical abilities at 7. But you fall in love with it, and then you are able to consistently work. You have a regimen. You practice. Like, how do you get to Carnegie Hall? You practice. So it's basically, I find that all of those people, like in any, I got a buddy out in Los Gatos, California. He's one of the largest venture capitalists in the world, and man, he just works hard on other people. Like he's willing to do what it takes to, like, it's the outliers. It's Malcolm Gladwell. It's the 10,000 hour, that we hear about, all the time. Now it's like kind of, it's kind of kitschy. I guess everybody says that now, but it really is that thing where you can look at it and go like, well, I wonder how much time this person spent on this. Like I was talking to Mike over here earlier. I said talking about guitars, and I'm a pretty shitty guitar player for most of my life. I like writing songs, but I never really tried. And I thought for a long time that it was just because you were gifted because, one day you woke up and your fingers work differently than the guy beside you. Yeah. But the truth is, it doesn't matter if it's Mike Campbell from the Heartbreakers or it's Clapton or it's Tom Bukovac or who on the top of guitar players, but they're great because they did 10,000 hours. They probably did 20,000 hours, and most people aren't willing to put in that work.
Well, most people think I'm working hard. Their definition of I'm working hard is different than typically when you run up on somebody who's great.
Yes. And
you realize, oh my God, that's a different level.
I know there is definitely a talent. Like, I think it's harder in our business. Guys out there listening, y'all probably know this. It's like, there's certain people that are just born with a voice that.
Right. They don't even have to work.
They didn't work for it, but it doesn't mean they aren't working for it to make it better. But like Stapleton or Adele or go down the Rod Stewart, whoever, it's like these guys have voices that were God-given.
That's just a gift. That's a gift.
And it doesn't mean that they didn't have to work very hard to get to where they are today. It just means I can take vocal lessons for the next fucking 40 years and I'm never going to sing like Chris Stapleton, and that's okay. It's just, I'm saying that that's not possible for me. I'm talking about people that are doing things that are a little more.
Sure. Over the years, I've talked about this so much because having a voice is such an aberration. It's such an exception to the rule in the sense that I've met people who have insane voices who are horrible musicians. They can't tell you one thing about music. They've never practiced. They've never done anything. They just have a gift. It is a gift. Now, it doesn't mean you don't have to
work your ass off in all the other ways.
For like stamina and be able to sing in front of a band with all that noise happening and kind of your control. You can make your control better, your range, things like that. You can tweak it. But I've known great singers that are horrible musicians, and I've known amazing musicians, the best in the world, that can't even utter a note.
No. You couldn't ask them to sing a guitar line. They'd be like, "Oh, I can't." Like, even though they hear it in their head, they still can't. They can't really verbalize that. I think that's. But really, the thing about your question is, it really comes down to one thing. As I've gotten older, you don't recognize this as a young man. I think I thought that people were given God-given talent because I think that's the easiest assumption for us as humans to maybe it's almost like a survival instinct to where we don't want to, if we haven't worked hard, if we haven't made the decisions that allowed us to do this or this or this to the level we would like to do it, it's easier for us to say, well, they just had God-given talent. And the truth is that the best piano players in the world, the best producers in the world, honestly, the best songwriters in the world, for depending on what they're trying to do, they just work harder than other people do. And and that's the common denominator with every single person that I'm around. 99% of them, let's say. Some of them were born into situations. That is definitely true. But most of them, if they're had pulled their own bootstraps up, it's because they worked harder. Now they had to get lucky and find they say what is it, time and circumstance, demand, time, and everything. It has to come together. You know, like your talent. You know, like
well, you're more likely to get lucky if you're working 4 times more than the other guy too. You know.
Yeah, for sure. But I'm just saying, like, it's like you know, me personally, like if I'm being honest about who I am as a songwriter artist, it's like if I was around 1970. I would probably be infinitely more, have my odds of success on a grander scale would be much higher than in today's marketplace, because the marketplace is completely different than it was when it was James Taylor and Cat Stevens and Joe Cocker. You know what I mean? Like, that's more who I am. You know, and so, accepting that is okay. So I say that it doesn't mean that I would have been any of those people at that time. It just means that that was the time where, for what I naturally do, that's when it was. There's a time frame for that. Now it's a little harder to do that if you're a new kid, if you're 19, or if you're 40.
Well, it's like a great quarterback in college getting drafted by a team that doesn't have an offensive line.
Well, it's like Marino. You talked about Marino. I know Marino very, very small just because of Darius. Like, you know, Darius is a big Dolphins fan, and he's, you know, and so every now and then I'll find myself in some fucking random city. I was in London playing fucking pool with Dan Marino, which is like, what? You know, my kid self would have been like, what the fuck just happened? But you know, Dan, if he would have been drafted by the 49ers in 1983 or 2 or whenever he was drafted, he would have won 5 Super Bowls. But he was with a team that didn't have a running back.
Yep.
And the offensive line was kind of shitty. So he got to 1 Super Bowl and never went back. And that's luck. It's not that, but it doesn't mean that he wasn't as talented as anyone else. And that's the thing that I think musicians,
You're right,
musicians here, this town is it's a heartbreak town. There's a Daryl Scott song that they, I don't know a lot about country music, but I do know Daryl Scott. I don't know if you know Daryl Scott, old singer, and he wrote, you know, Dixie Chicks did a song called Heartbreak Town, I think. Heartbreak Town, I think that's what it's called. Beautiful fucking song. And that's what this town is. Sure. It literally, the best musicians in the world will move here, and it doesn't mean they're going to be successful.
Sure.
It's like, because they got to have so many other things. And I think the work ethic is part of it. And I guess the other thing for me is I consider myself, and like you, I fucking talk all the time, as you can tell. And Jamie, he's doing a fucking podcast. He talks all the time. And we love talking. And I think that a lot of the people that I am friends with, that I have met, are very personable people. They are not afraid to walk into a room and do the silver tongue thing. You know, it doesn't scare them for whatever reason, whether their mom hugged them a lot when they were a kid or whatever. They just were born with it. And I think I think the work ethic and the ability to be a people person is almost across the board, unless you're specialized, you know, with your, you know, if you're a tech guy and building,
right,
you know, widgets or something, that has nothing to do with that.
And being a people person goes back to the first character you talked about, which is just be kind. You know, people that are typically people that are good in relationships or relationship people. Yeah, they're kind. Yeah, they listen. You know, they look at you when
which is a hard thing, and you know this. And I think you've done a good job. I've paid attention to, you know, the first batch of these that you've done, and congrats on getting this off the ground, because I know we've been talking about it for a while. And but you know, DRH or you know, I don't know, Hodges or these people. You know, they're sweet, kind people. They're talented, but they're also genuinely kind. And in a town like this, you know, if any aspiring songwriters or, you know, people that are here already and are just down and don't feel like, you know, things are going their way and stuff, you know, it's hard here, because it's people here are very transient. Like, even with their relationships, like, it's like, what can you do for me today? And I decided a number of years ago that it wasn't I've been approached by a lot of people that could do things for me, or I could do things for them. But if they're not kind, when you get old, I say that I'm not old, but I feel old. You know, you're getting wiser, I guess, is what you hope. Is that kindness is the one thing. It's the I don't know if it's Maya Angelou or whoever said, you know, it's people forget what you say, but never forget how you make them feel. And that's the thing. And in this town, it's full of a lot of fuckers. Yeah. Like, you know what I mean? And most of those people are not people that care about you. And so, and it's hard because sometimes at certain times in your life in a town like this, you need those people that don't care about you, because those people are writing your check, or they're trying to get you songs cut, or whatever it might be. But I think the happiness quota is really, you're going to hit that a lot easier when you just focus on kind people. Do not waste your time with people that aren't. And so I have a lot of people that are, I guess, considered to be you know, successful in their fields and, you know, the top of the food chain maybe, but the one thing is, I hope that when people say, if I am friends with someone, I hope that people recognize that, oh, that person is a good person, because that's what I want. That's probably the biggest compliment you can get. I say that with you. If I meet somebody from you, like there's been a number of friends that, DRH is a person that's people that I didn't know necessarily before really, but if you're friends with them and you vouch for them, I believe that they're, and so surround yourself with those people. Yeah. They say you're the culmination of 10 people around you, and make sure that at least 8 or 9 of those people are good motherfuckers.
Yeah. So that's very true. Interestingly enough, speaking of David Ryan Harris, he was on here.
Mm-hmm. I know. Yeah.
And I asked him a different type of question, but I just asked you what was a kind of a common denominator with all these successful folks. But I asked him, hey, what's the biggest quality that you would say as David Ryan Harris that has led to your success? And that's what would you say is the most important thing that guarantees your success, or at least gives you a good shot? He said the same thing. He said, man, of all the things, all my talents, of all the things I've done, he said, I think I'm kind.
He is. He
is.
And the thing about Dave Ryan, he is, and that I think it's because if you can come to terms with who you are as a human, which is really hard to do, especially when you're younger, especially in a town like Nashville. LA is very similar. These entertainment places that are kind of fly by night type of,
fool you a little bit.
Well, and if you can figure out who you are and you're secure with it, which is fucking impossible. None of us are really secure. We try to act like, but we all have our issues. When you figure that out, you're going to be happier, which is going to make you kinder. And the same people you see on the way up are the same people you can see on the way down type of situation. And it's like this, like the stock market. It's always that.
Hey folks, I want to talk to you a little bit about the sponsor for our podcast, Love Justice International. Love Justice International is an organization very, very dear to my heart. Did you know that 40 million people, as we speak, are living in slavery as a result of human trafficking in our modern day society? Love Justice is an organization that actually attacks that trafficking, and they do it at its most strategic point while it's occurring, but most importantly, before the men, women, and children have been exploited. They're in 19 different countries, and in those 19 different countries, they've worked with authorities to arrest over 950 suspects and have prevented over 24,000 people from being trafficked. This is so very important. So if you get a second, please go to their website, lovejustice.ngo, and for just a couple bucks a month, couple cups of coffee, you can literally stop a girl or a boy from being exploited or enslaved. So once again, take a minute, go to lovejustice.ngo, lovejustice.ngo. Thanks.
There's people in Nashville that are the worst humans in the world, but because of the little area that they make money off of them, they let them be that. I don't want to be around those people, and I think that that's made me infinitely happier. It took me a while to figure that out. And about the past 6-7 years, I've really focused on that. And I don't deal well with, I don't suffer fools or assholes very well. And that's but I'm so much happier with that.
There are successful people, and we see it a lot in our town, like you just mentioned. There are successful people that are assholes, and you can look at them and say, oh, you can be an asshole and be successful. You might be right, but here's the problem with that. Careers are long. Careers have a lot of ups and downs.
Yeah.
And your chances, you're going to have some moments where you're not hitting it and things are down and you got to figure it out. And you weren't, everybody's putting up with you being an asshole when you're super successful.
When you're at top, yeah.
But what happens when you have that downturn, and you will, even as an artist, you make a couple bad records all of a sudden, and are you, that you being like that ups your chance for not being able to recover from those downs.
100%.
Whereas the guys that are good guys, the women that are great people here in our
they stick around.
Business, they stick around because they get through. When they're down, people don't want to hit them because they're just a kind person. They're good, and they typically work their way through those down times.
Yeah.
But if you're an asshole and you're successful, man, good luck, because when that downturn comes,
it will.
Well, typically, and I think that I've known people, and I love this. This is to me the journey and the complexity of the journey. I love the process now, and especially in this town, it's just a lot of it is about just hanging around and just perseverance. But I've also known people who were total assholes and not good people and successful. They have a downturn, and they hit the bottom, and that bottom causes them to
Change.
look at themselves, and they realize it, and that actually makes them a good person. I know people that are really great people who were not really great people 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And typically what it is that changes them is adversity.
Oh yeah, 100%.
And realizing, oh man, this doesn't feel good right here.
The world will break you, and you're stronger. It'll make you stronger in the broken pieces, or whatever it is. The Hemingway quote. That's a good one. But that's essentially what it is. I do think that is true. I think it can work both ways. I think in this town, I've seen people that start out like, and then they kind of drink the Kool-Aid, and it goes a little bit. They go a different route. But yeah, I don't think I know a number of people that they'll even admit it. The great thing is some people will admit that. They'll be like, God, I was such a fucking asshole, man. And then like something happened that made them. My little brother passed away, 13, 14 years ago now, drinking and driving, and I had nothing to do with that. But at the same time, when you go through something like that, it makes you kinder. It makes you assess life in a completely different way. And I think that any type of thing like that, anything that really breaks you, that really makes, I went through a divorce, there's all types of things that make you, and it could be that for anybody. It could be, it could be losing your record deal. It could be, and it's going to suck for a while, but eventually it will make you a kinder person. It's inevitable.
It's hard to, I think when I've been in this town for 20 years. It's hard to not what's the word? I embrace those hardships in my journey and those times where I was lost, bad things happened, or things didn't happen that maybe I deserved to have happen.
Yeah.
Maybe the thing that you knew was your best work that didn't get the.
Well, hey, it's the Garth Brooks thing. It is. I don't know who wrote it. Maybe one of those old timers in the 90s. Unanswered prayers. Some of God's greatest gifts or unanswered prayers, or whatever. And it's kind of that stuff. It's like, I've had a number of things that, like, I've had a few things that have hit pretty well for when I was here writing more so for the country world. I didn't grow up with country music, but I like songwriting, so I'd write some tunes. And there was a few things that could have been massive that were supposed to happen that didn't for whatever reason. And honestly, if those things would have happened, my journey would have been completely different, and it would have been easier, maybe financially, and some things would have been different. But man, I wouldn't be where I am now, and like we probably wouldn't have met. You know what I mean? There's so many things that wouldn't have happened. Like Lauren, my fiance, like I wouldn't be with Lauren. Like there's all these things that happen, and you go, and I'm so much happier now than I've ever been in the past. And that's the journey, and that's accepting some things, making sure. But I do think that those things that kind of broke me were the things that actually made. It's like, like you break a horse, whatever. It's like it really does make you better. And I think that this, what you're doing with interviewing all these, creative types, every one of us has these stories, like, and the crew that you're going to bring around, it's kind of like when I do my Songwriters in Paradise events, I have about 30 or 40 guys and girls that I bring to these different events. They kind of interchangeable, and someone always gets added, a new person or two gets added a year, 3 people. And when anybody asks me who they're going to be, once again goes back to like, I'm like, well, not all these people are going to be the most successful people you've heard of. Maybe they will be one day, but I was like, but they're all going to be very good. They're going to be great entertainers, great songwriters, great singers, but they're also going to be great humans. Mm-hmm. And I feel like for you, that's what you're giving people, is that the people that you're going to come in and interview here, I don't know everybody that you've done it with, but I think that if Jamie vouches for someone, you guys should listen. That's what I say.
Well, they're good people. They're good musicians.
Anyway, yeah.
Man, I was just thinking of this. I might have even said it on here before. I'm not sure, but it made me think of a quote. There was this very successful artist that was talking to a bunch of creatives in a room one time. This was way back when I first moved to town, and I remember him looking at everybody and saying, hey, a lot of you out there are sitting there and you're sad because you haven't realized your dreams, or something hasn't happened for you, or whatever. He said, but listen, I'm here to tell you that it may be, but for only the grace of God that you haven't gotten that thing you want. Yeah. That may be God's ultimate gift to you. And I remember hearing that and saying, okay, in our minds, we think this is the road. This is how I get there. And inevitably, I just think my road has been the things I'm most grateful for in my journey are adversity. Mm-hmm. And that's why I embrace that, and I'm so grateful for the adversity that I've had, because short of that, See this with a lot of young artists, and it's tough because you don't know how to combat it. But sometimes these young artists aren't quite writing the songs they need to write that are really going to be compelling and change people out there, that are going to make people listen. And a lot of times it's because they haven't been through they haven't been through tough stuff yet. And so what do? Do you can't just like go look. Well, I did. I had to force myself to, I had to mess up the room a little bit because I hadn't, when I first came here, I hadn't gone through enough tough stuff. And some of it, as I look back, was kind of subconscious. I kind of sabotaged some things and it wasn't intentional, but now I look back on it and I know myself well enough to know in my head and in my soul, I had to mess the room up a little in order for me to feel the things that now when I sit down and write a lyric,
you write it from a place of reality, like, it's a real thing.
Well, there's a well there I can draw from, and I didn't have a well to draw from, and I have a well now.
In songwriting, and in our world, I think artist or songwriter, it's like authenticity. People, it's almost like we as humans have this ability to sniff out bullshit. It's almost like a survival technique that we, when we were little tribes, the guy comes in and snake oil medicine man or whatever, you recognize something's a little off, and I think that I noticed that when I was here in Nashville, first, like I came here 20 years ago, and you get into this world where you're, like I said, I grew up on the Beatles and Neil Young, and I listened to Pearl Jam, and music. That's what I grew up on. The Allman Brothers, and I always laughed at country music. It's like, it's redneck music. That's what I thought. And I came here though because I realized that Guy Clark lived here, Steve Earle, some people that I respected as songwriters. Back in the days of liner notes, and you would read about these people and be like, oh, that's a great song. Who wrote that? And when I moved here, I kind of got into that world where I started making money writing songs, and all I was trying to do was write like Springsteen songs with throwing in a tractor or something every now and then. You know what I mean? Like I didn't know. That's, and I had some success because I did write some songs that were really me. They were still kind of country. I grew up in Camden, South Carolina, population like 5,000 people. I went to the same school from the first grade to the 12th grade with the same kids. You know what I mean? Like it's very small. So I could write about that, but I didn't grow up on country music. So there was a very small window of what I could do that was authentic to what this town wants to sell, the widgets they're trying to sell. And so I had varying degrees of success, but they'd never knock any doors down. And it took me a long time to realize it was because I wasn't authentic. I don't go hunting. I have family that does that. I don't have any Hank Williams Jr. albums. I don't know anything about this shit. And it was interesting to me because I was angry about that, not having more success. And then once I was able to step back and take stock of myself and go like, well, I shouldn't have success because the guys here that write those songs, they genuinely do those things. They're talking about bass fishing boats. They're probably one on Friday and Saturday, so
it was more, especially when you first got here, and this was, it was more of a culture. It was a relegated culture to the music back then, whereas now it's kind of broadened to where you got a bunch of people that don't ever see a tractor or ever been on a tractor, they're still writing pop songs.
They're still writing pop songs with those lyrics, though. I mean, like it's still that type, but it's a very different thing. I can't pretend to be that either because these are kids that grew up on their parents were probably listening to I don't know Chumbawaya. What is that song like? Like they're probably listening to Kid Rock and fucking Brooks and Dunn. It's not like that. That's why what's happening happens. So it's. But I wasn't that person. I was getting. But that's okay because if that's the crowd they're shooting for, then that's what they should be writing those songs because the listener is going to hear and go, oh, that's who, if you're going for a country radio or whatever, And I think that same thing goes across all genres of music. And the reason I bring it up is because when you hear Adele sing, something's different. She's doing what she's supposed to be doing. When you hear John Mayer, the albums he makes, you go, that's authentic. This is real. Like what he's doing is like what he's meant to be doing. And I think that's a hard thing you're talking about young artists. We're talking about people just kind of lost. Is figuring out what it is you're really supposed to be doing and understanding that that is the reason why a lot of people have success. Is because when Stapleton walks on stage and sings, yes, he's got the voice and all these things, but he transcends to so many people because he's doing exactly what he's supposed to be doing. Yeah. He's not trying, because Stapleton is a prime example of somebody that for a decade he was here bouncing around doing a rock and roll album, doing a album that was going to sound like, Coldplay, doing one that was going to be a heavy rock. He's doing, and then and he's good at that because he's just fucking that good.
He's good,
but what he really is what he does now.
Yeah.
And that translates.
Right.
And I feel like that's what, for any of us out there that are, banging our head against the wall, ask yourself if you're actually doing what it is you were meant to be. You're like what you're really inside. If you stripped away the money, if you stripped away all the other things, and music is still what you want to do, what is it you would actually be doing?
Sure.
And I found my happiness. Really, I was so fucking depressed when I was here writing for guys that wanted me to write songs that I just couldn't write. And I listened to songs from 10 years ago and I'll be like, that is the worst fucking song I've ever heard in my life. And it's because I was trying to write something,
Sure.
That's all. It just, not every one of them, but there was a lot of them because publishing world guys, if y'all don't know this, we'll write 200, 300 songs in a year, and and you're throwing shit at the wall, trying to see what sticks. Because if you get hot, the company's going to keep pushing you. And, but when you're writing 300 songs a year and something you don't believe in, it starts getting harder to do it.
Well, when you step back and you find that thing like you did, you step back, what is the thing that I do? What's the voice? What's my voice? The beautiful thing about this town is it's so collaboratively based that you might all of a sudden come into a room, and if you bring that thing you bring, and it's not straight up the middle country or straight up the middle, whatever genre, whatever it is, if you bring your thing that's authentic, you might have the second guy in the room or the second girl in the room might bring something that's more country. And all of a sudden, you bring your thing, this other person brings their thing, this other person, and all of a sudden it shapes this deal to where it sounds unique.
Yeah, I've seen it.
Because everybody's bringing their different thing, and so that it becomes like this pot of chili. It just gets mushed into this one thing. Whereas if everybody's coming trying to write that top 10 country hit that everybody's chasing, then you're all bringing one thing. But typically those great songs happen when...
Well, it doesn't mean that
Burgess
you can't...
is a great example of this. Like, to me, Burgess, I couldn't figure that guy out because he can do anything. First song I wrote with him, song called Nag Champa, and he walked in and I'd heard Ben...
Nag Champa?
Nag Champa.
Okay.
But you knowing Ben...
Yeah, it makes sense.
That doesn't blow you away that we came up with a stupid title like that.
Yeah.
So he walks in, and I'd heard of Ben, and I'd heard some stuff he'd done. I always thought everything he did, even as a producer at that time, it sounded cool. It sounded different, Didn't sound country. It sounded just different.
Yeah.
And he walked in flip-flops and a flannel and a snapback backwards, high as a kite, with a big, long beard. And I was like, he's talking like he grew up on the other side of the tracks with people that weren't his same skin color.
Yeah.
And I'm like, bro, what? You are not country.
Yeah.
Are you country? He goes, I'm kind of, but I said, can you rap? And he goes, hell yeah, bro. Yeah, I can. I was like, let's write that. And I remember sitting down at the Rhodes and just coming up with a deal. And I was like, let's write something where you can rap. And we wrote this tune. I think it was Steph Jones was in there as well. And I was like, let's do something where you rap. Let's write a chorus. Let's write a hook that's like you can sing the hook, but then you rap in this. And we just had fun. And somebody like Ben, and then, literally within 2 days, I remember going to a party and I think it was Dom from Live Nation. She walks in, working with Rihanna and Jay-Z and all that. She walks up and she goes, are you the one that wrote Nag Champa? We just heard that yesterday. Like instantly, because we wrote something that was authentic.
Yeah.
And it was, I guess, going back to Burgess, he's a great example of what you're talking to, because if you bring something that's authentic, invariably it becomes special. And
because it's yours.
It's yours. It's authentic.
You're not copying someone else.
Yeah, you're so much more likely. You may have 8 strikes that are just not even anywhere close, but the 1 or 2, the 1 out of 10 that you do over the course of a year, 10 songs out of 100 are going to be super special because you're not aiming for that lowest common, low-hanging fruit.
I guess my thing is just, and as you get older, hopefully you figure that out. It's like I think you figured out what it is you do. very well. You can do a lot of things. You're very versatile, but and I think that's where Ben, I think with Ben, it's like, that's not my music, but I love Ben Burgess because he's really who he is. I mean, I've never met another insane person like him. You know what I mean? Like, it's like we talked about that Outlaw song. I don't write a lot of country songs anymore, and I was there, and I wrote with Jordan Reynolds, Josh Kerr, and Steve Kerr, Josh Kerr, and Ben, and I said let's write this tune about this. I was like, let's try this and go from this angle, and I did that, and Josh brought in what he brought in, and Jordan brought in, and we would never write. I've never even written with these guys before, and I've written with Ben, but Ben brought in this one little thing that his swagger. And because all of us did it together, it was magic happen, because that's the collaborative thing about Nashville. And I guess what I'm getting at is that Nashville is not just one thing. It used to be a lot more geared towards a very specific thing. But now you can don't be afraid of figuring out who it is you really are and sticking to that gun. Because what I found out about Nashville is that they will tell you, especially Music Row guys, because this is how they make their money. They need you to be, if you're female, you need to be Taylor Swift, or you need to be this. And if you're a guy, their version of success is Kenny Chesney or Luke Bryan or whatever. But if that's not your version of success, and you're really going to have to stretch to do that, you're never going to be successful. That's all I'm getting at. But figure out what your version of success is, and then go after that.
Well, and the other thing, to your point, that I think everybody has to remember. I mean, I have to remember this every day when I'm walking the studio. We should all, because it is 100% the truth. A&R guys and A&R women, they're just doing their job. They're always going to have you chasing the thing that's on the charts.
It's working right
today.
Yeah.
Here's the crazy thing, because that's what they know. They're trying to keep their job. Yeah. Crazy thing is the stuff that pops off. When Taylor Swift popped off, that didn't sound like typical country. When Chris Stapleton put out that record, that was not typical country. When Adele popped off, that did not sound like it. No. Everybody told her it sounded like an old person's record when Rolling in the Deep came out. So invariably, though, they're trying to get you to write that stuff, because that's just all they know. They're trying to get you to cop what's selling right now.
We have somebody that never working here.
Invariably, that's the stuff that pops off is the stuff that sounded different. Adele, she sounded different. When that Gautier song came out, that didn't sound like, that was one of the biggest songs in the world. It didn't sound like anything. So I think that's the important thing to remember, is they're going to tell you, just because they're doing their job, they're going to tell you to chase something here because that's the only thing that's there. The great thing doesn't exist yet. The thing that's going to pop off doesn't exist yet. So they're trying to get you to chase this aesthetic because there are songs on the radio, and I think that sound like
people
that.
That listen to this, I mean, I think there's probably a wide swath of people that listen to you because you do have a eclectic taste to go all over the place. But if you're trying to be a Nashville songwriter, I do believe that, like those A&R people you're talking about, and those people, publishers, they have to. There's a very small box usually, and a few outliers happen. I think that so there's a reason that they're doing that, because they know it works. It is a there's Big Machine Records because it is a big machine. Mm-hmm. It is literally, they can plug anyone into that machine, and if they've got the metrics, they can figure it out, and if you're willing to play the game, there's a good chance it can work.
You always need those middle of the road, right up the center songs.
And I think
right?
that's always going to be there. I think that if you're, if you're an artist, or if you're trying to do, I think one thing, like we bring up Adele or Stapleton and a number of other people, I think it's just, I think one thing is, like, back to humans' ability.
Casey Musgraves, another example, didn't sound like anything when she came out, and all of a sudden, boom, she came and hit radio, but she becomes the biggest artist in the world. Jason Isbell. Well, that sounded like.
But I think that stuff, I think what I'm getting at with that stuff is that it's because it has a feeling, people know, like it's that sniff out bullshit thing. They know when something's different and good and authentic, I guess, would be that word I keep throwing around, but they recognize it. And I think that, in this world of Pro Tools and all the things that you can do now in a box, where the talent level is like, you don't really have to be able to, in the 60s and 70s, even the shittiest bands had to play. They had to actually go in the studio and play those songs. And they had to do it live. And I think it's almost funny to me, but I think a lot of what people are like blown away by is like actual talent. like real talent that's focused on what they want to be, knows what they're trying to do, but like it sounds different because, oh, holy shit. Well, in a world where everything is just so homogenized, and so, especially in our town, like and I'm only saying our town based on the Music Row factory, because it is a factory. There's the 10% of the people out there, Jamie would vouch for this, maybe he got to be a producer, so he might have to not say this, but 10% of them are, like, holy shit. And the rest of them are like, okay, whatever, And I think that's because it's a factory. They've got to do it. So there are people that squeeze through that, but I'm talking about on a broader scale, when you get into the whole of music, the totality of music, I think the ones that really break through, and it doesn't necessarily mean, like, I wouldn't say that Sturgill Simpson or Isbell and those guys are necessarily massive acts to most people won't know who the fuck you're talking about, But the people that do like that kind of music notice that something is different. And I think that that's what happens, whether it's D'Angelo or whether it's, Isbell or whether any, or
think about when the Lauryn Hill record came out, one of the greatest records ever. I mean, when that came out, that was just markedly different, and it was so authentic.
And you knew something was different, and not even, and I think the key is, when you don't know anything about, because the country music, they know who their database is. Like, they've got an email list, and they just fucking hit that email list. And if they send them out, if one day this guy is no longer on the radio, they'll send another one out just like him, and they've got the Facebook ad ready for it, and they know who their people are going to be. I think some of the other people that hit on not just in a genre situation, like, I mean, you can use Adele, because it's pop, it was kind of classic. It was America. Who knows what it was in the beginning? She was doing, To Make You Feel My Love, like one of the most beautiful versions you've ever heard of your life. The early album, like Chasing Pavement album, like those types of things. They just sound different. Every person. My mom, but I'm saying your mom, anyone's mother who doesn't listen to anything, they just know for some reason this sounds different. And I think it just comes down to focus and everything, but I think it's just real, true talent, which is we've gotten away from it a lot because we don't, in Nashville, I always say, we talk to session guys like Bukovac or Ilya or whoever, those guys, these amazing musicians, the best in the world, Fred, Elderham, those guys. Well, they're kind of interchangeable players. Like, you did an album for Colby recently, right? Like that Colby album, like, you talked about making sure you had the right band for that album because you knew what you needed, right? You wanted to make sure that you made something that was right for her. A lot of times in a town like this, it is a factory. The same players are playing on everything. And so it's irrelevant.
Because they're so brilliant, they can.
But I'm saying that the artist is irrelevant because the artist is interchangeable in many of these cases, to where that it's kind of, you forget about it. The great song is catchy, you listen to it when you're driving to work, whatever, but you forget about it because there's another one in 3 months. The real artist, the ones that we remember, those, and I wasn't a big John Mayer fan in the beginning because his body is a wonderland and shit like that, but after a couple albums, you're like, holy shit, this dude is fucking, like, he's a master. And I think that's there's certain people that no matter what your education in terms of music is, your musical education or ability to decipher what key something's in or whether is fucking different.
Hey folks, one more shout out to our sponsor for the podcast, Love Justice International. Love Justice started 20 years ago when 6 college students decided that they would go to Kathmandu, Nepal, play soccer in the streets, get to know the kids of the city. And in the course of doing this, they really fell in love with Nepal, but also became aware of the scourge that really inflicts not just Nepal, but the surrounding region, and that is human trafficking. So as a result of seeing this, they tried to figure out what they could do and started the organization originally called Tiny Hands and now renamed as Love Justice International. One of the other reasons why this is very near to my heart and why I'm so closely connected to it is one of those 6 college students was my little brother. And as a result, I really got to watch them over the years and how passionate and devoted they are to this cause. But not just that, but how effectively and efficiently they administer the aid and the help towards eradicating slavery in the area. So I can't emphasize this enough. Go to the website, lovejustice.ngo. For just a few bucks a month, you can prevent a child from being trafficked or enslaved. It's that easy. So lovejustice.ngo. That's lovejustice.ngo. Thank you. Man, go back to you mentioned your mom. I just remembered before Coldplay hit. I remember I was listening to that the first record before the hit. I'm blanking right now, but it had
Yellow before that one, or that was Yellow. Yellow was the album, the first one that came out for them.
That wasn't the title of the record, though, was it?
The song was Yellow. I don't remember.
I'm blanking on the record, but essentially they sounded like an indie band still at that point.
Yes.
And I remember I was kind of deep in it at that point, and I remember my brother was in college at the time, and so he was always get me a playlist that was just all the college kids were listening to. It wasn't mainstream, so I had all these bands that I was privy to, largely because of Brian coming back from college, and so I remember having Coldplay before they really broke, and I was playing it at the house I grew up in Florida, and my mother, who both my parents are insane musicians and have huge heritage on both their sides, so I came by it because of anything I did. It was just kind of in my blood. But like my mother, she was a classically trained pianist. Before she dropped out to be in a band, she was at the University of Michigan. And I remember my mother just like literally making food in the kitchen and hearing it. And she said she would never comment on music that Brian and I would play and whatever. She just, because she probably didn't like it.
Yeah.
And she heard a Coldplay song and she came up, she said, "Who is that?" And I was like, "Oh, it's this band Coldplay." And she goes, "They sound like she goes, "I love it. Their melodies are just really beautiful. And I love their chord structures." She said, "It sounds like they're referencing this classical composer that I used to play. It's a lot of their melody movements." And I was like, oh anyway, whatever. Okay. And then 2 weeks later, I'm reading it might not have been 2 weeks, maybe a year later, I'm reading an article and they're interviewing Chris Martin and he references this classical composer. And I was like, my mom just got massive cred in my book. The fact that she popped out and she heard that movement.
But she noticed that something was different.
She noticed that something was different, and she popped out. She made a comment because Coldplay was different. My mother didn't like that music, but she knew, even as someone who didn't spend any time listening to pop music at the time.
They give this quote to a lot of different people, but Miles Davis, there's 2 types of music, good and bad. And that's essentially what it is. It's like I can respect when I hear, I don't even know, like, old reference, but like Eminem, when you heard Eminem come out, you were like, okay, this is different. This is better than all the other stuff. Like when I was a kid, like when The Chronic came out, I didn't listen to Snoop Dogg or Dre, but I knew it instantly. I was like, this is fucking awesome. Yeah. Like, I don't know what it is. And same thing with country music. If I listen to old school country or something comes out that I just instantly am like, holy shit, what is that? And so it goes across the board.
Yeah, even like somebody like, I wouldn't pride myself as a hip hop expert even close, but when Kendrick came out, it was like, oh my goodness, that's different. He's real. And it supersedes genres. It supersedes.
And we get into that world where you just kind of, I think that's what we've, I was in the studio yesterday and doing some horns for my album, and one of the guys, the horn guys have these fucking crazy ears, like you guys, piano players and stuff, just nuts, just like calling out everything. And they were like, something happened to Pro Tools. And he's like, well, there was before Pro Tools, pros, and that's it's true. It's like, it's just, and I think that we know it. I think we innately know it. I read an article recently and it said that you were talking about Spotify and Pandora and the royalty stuff. And they said, that 65 or 68% of the music that is listened to, that's streamed, is over 2 years old. And so, and that's probably being generous. It's probably, if you even go back to 5 or 10 years, it's still, so people realize what quality is. And no, of course, some of it's just the fact we get hit over the head with it. There's only so many ways to listen to, whether it be Tom Petty or whatever. Back in the day, you heard, whatever it is, you heard all the time, but it is, I think there was a difference because of the way that I think we're getting back to that. I think I get caught up sometimes on, when I was here, it's taken me about 6 or 7 years to distance myself from the Nashville music row scene. And it doesn't mean that I don't love a lot of those people. It just, it wasn't for me. But I have to remind myself that what those guys are doing, they're selling a widget. And they have to accept that, they have to believe what they're doing is valuable, or what's the fucking point? Even though deep down inside, I doubt that they, it's probably not what the honest, if they went to therapy and talked about it, they would probably be like, I don't care about any of these people. And that's probably part of the reason that a lot of artists that we know and we work with that are young and come in, they get a deal, they're the hottest thing in the world, and then a week later they're dropped and they never hear from their lawyer or manager or whatever again, their label again. It's just part of the thing. But I believe that the best stuff out there is done by the people that are doing the stuff that reminds us of who we are and why we're here, and we feel it, and we don't fucking know why. And I think it's beyond, it's in the East, it's up there somewhere.
Well, just thinking, And I think bringing it back to the concept that we've been beating on for the past 30 minutes, authenticity and finding that thing. I got a buddy that's been hitting me on the word highest value. Find that thing in you, know your highest value, and quit doing it if it's not your highest
100%.
value, right? And that goes back to authenticity, goes back to finding your thing. But I just think back to, for anybody who's listening, I think the concept is, find your highest value, find your authentic voice, as much as you can not be distracted by the low-hanging fruit, but do something that matters. I'm just thinking back to...
Don't do it for money.
Yeah, you mentioned the, session players. I started off as a road guy, and then I got in the session world, and then I was kind of getting busier and busier as a session player, playing all different stuff, just showing up. My cartridge would show up at a different studio every day, and I'd play on something, and all of a sudden I stepped back after 3-4 years of that. I was making more money every year, and I was like, oh, shit. I got scared, and I was like, this is not good, and I quit.
Yeah.
And I quit because it scared me. But these session guys, they're such great players, and they're playing on, the best players in the world. But even those guys, we know them all, and we talk to them all the time. They don't really like anything they play on, but occasionally they do.
Yeah.
And the guys, the A&R guys you're talking about that talk to their therapist about not liking any of the artists, occasionally they do.
Occasionally,
and one out of these 20 artists.
It keeps them going.
And I'm thinking back, I just got a text this morning from a bass player who, I won't even say his name, but he's been doing it a lot of years, very successful. He's one of the first, 3-4 phone calls on, in that chair. And I texted him and I said, bro, I just have loved going through your parts for the last month. I'm wrapping up this record. And he was on the tracking session. And I, like you said, I picked the players very specifically, and not necessarily the first call at every chair, but I picked these guys because I wanted to do something different, and I wanted that combo to be good. And I texted this guy this morning. I texted him last night. I said, thank you. I've really, really just enjoyed over the course of the last month just listening to your parts. Every time I pull up a tune, it's so musical, it's so real, and I never have to think about it. It just, my tracks are all so solid because of the stuff you played. And I said, just thank you for bringing that to the table.
That's a credit to you, though, for knowing you knew what you were going after. Once again, it goes back to authenticity, but it also goes back to being focused on what it is you need. As a producer, that's such a...
Well, it's like my role there is the same as it is for everyone, no matter what your role is in the musical processes. I'm trying to create something authentic and good and different and not hit the low-hanging fruit. So he texted me back and he said, bro, I've said this to you probably 5 times since we tracked. That was possibly the best musical experience I've ever had in this town.
Oh, man.
And he said, that is why, that week that we spent making that record, that is why I came to Nashville. And he said, unfortunately, sadly to say, I rarely have that experience. He said, but that session was why I moved here to Nashville. Those sessions, that album was why I moved here to Nashville. And he said, I'm so grateful it happened. And I think back to it every day.
I think it's still out there. Like those opportunities are still there. That still happens. Music City, the greatest musicians in the world live here. Like per capita, it's not even close. Like it really, there's great musicians all over the planet. I get that. But yesterday I was in the studio, and a friend of mine's boyfriend plays for Hosier, and he's like the band leader. And he lives over, in the UK, and we talked about it. And I was like, no offense, man. I was like, he was talking about the musicians here. I was like, no offense to you. There's great musicians in London and LA, and everything. I was like, but per capita, it's not even close. So it's like you can put the 100 best guitar players in Nashville together, and you can go out and do a Guitar Olympics against every other country.
Yeah.
And we would beat every other country. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, you could take other 100 guitar players in America and put them against the 100 guys in Nashville, and they're going to lose. Yeah. So it's, it's a beautiful, the music community here. I think there's incredible music here, and it's still there. You just have to find it. And I guess that's kind of what it is with like that authenticity thing, going back to that again, is just, man, it's here. I think that when you hear it, it's you don't know why. It's like you just don't know what it is. When I go in the studio, I have a certain band that I play with because they're the guys that like what I do, but they also, they're in the right place, they're the right headspace, and it feels authentic. And that's what I want I want that in every bit of my life. And we're boys because of that. Mm-hmm. You're an authentic, you're the real deal. So I want people. I want to smoke Cahibos, and I want to drink good wine, and I want to hang out with people that make me fucking think and feel good about it. And Nashville's full of those people. It's a little harder to find them now that the masses are here on the level that they, when we were kids here, much smaller town. Yeah, man.
I'm thinking of this quote by this guy named Seth Godin, who I think is one of the really great thinkers in the last 10 years as the streaming thing, as the kind of the internet that started popping up. And he was one of the forefathers of figuring out how to monetize that in a cool way, how to like actually harness the power of your online presence, or, he's just but he's a great philosophical thinker. And Seth Godin said, well, he's an artist. And so I remember when I first came up on Seth Godin, I loved how he would always speak to artists in the context of this new movement. And he would always prioritize the art of it, and kind of the empowering of that was secondary, but he would always speak to the art. And he said one time, be more scared of being normal than being disliked. Mm-hmm. He said, and I love that because I'm scared of being normal now. Mm-hmm. And I'm a 4 on the Enneagram, so it's kind of easy. It's built in me. But I think I really love that quote, because who wants to be normal? Who wants to be normal? I mean, to me, I'd rather do a project that everybody listens to and says, wow, he missed the boat on that. That was shit.
Okay.
I'd rather do that than just be there. Yeah. There's a project that's just kind of there.
Yeah, yeah. Even if it's successful.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to be the guy that's just there. I don't want to be the producer.
And this is an easy conversation, folks, for us to have as the older cats that have been here, that like kind of get to, because we're lucky. Like, I think when you asked me, going back to when you asked me about successful individuals I'm friends with and stuff, going back to that, I do think that one thing that we kind of touched on a little bit, but it's really perseverance, not giving up. That is a really, really big. There was an old songwriter here when I first got here. It's like a lifetime ago now. I can't even barely remember it. But a guy named Chuck Cannon, he's an old songwriter. He was from South Carolina, so he wrote songs for like Toby Keith and stuff like that. Very talented cat, but just did a certain thing that wasn't really my thing. But he was successful. And back in the early 2000s, finding somebody that was from South Carolina was like a diamond in the rough. There weren't many of them here. And so we went to dinner one night. He just kind of was kind enough to take me and my ex there, and he told me. He was like, is there anything else that you want to do? And I was like, what do you mean? He goes, anything else in the world that you want to do? And I was like, no. I was like, I want to do music. I was like, I want to, play music, write songs, do all the things around music. I was like, and he goes, okay. He goes, I have to ask you that, because if there is anything else in the world you want to do, you should go do it. Because this is a fucking miserable existence in a lot of ways. And you need to move. If you have any doubt that this is not what you want to do, you'll never exist. And that was 20 years ago. I've been here. This January is 20 years I've been here, and and it doesn't mean that you're going to be successful or like whatever. But I mean, like you might not reach your financial dreams or whatever it is, but you sticking it out is a big, huge thing, because like a lot of the people that somebody else around you is going to get to a position of power that may help you. When that position of power could be anything. It could be working in a publisher, it could be a bartender, who knows what it is. Right. But it's something that so I think that it's really just going after it for as long as you can, and making sure that if you're doing music, it doesn't matter if you're doing power pop or country or or blues or whatever it is. It is all you want to do. Yeah. Because if you stop, I think when you're a kid, it's hard to understand how long life is, if you're lucky. Like life is long if you're lucky. Mm-hmm. A lot of people don't make it that far. But if you're going to do music, you have to stick. You have to tell yourself that fucking I want to be Willie fucking Nelson. Mm-hmm. When I'm 90. I want to have, they're going to wheel my ass out on the stage, and I want to go out there and sing and play for some people and tell some stories, and because that's the dream. Mm-hmm. And if that's not your dream, and I don't mean you have to be a performer, because some people are just songwriters who want to be producers or anything, but you never want to give that up, because as Chuck Cannon told me, he's like, if there's anything else, there can be no plan B.
Sure.
If there's a plan B, it will come through in everything you do.
And he's basically not to keep harping the authenticity thing, but that's what he's asking. Is this really what you want to do? Are you trying to do this because of what you can get from it, or is this you? I mean, you're close with the Hootie guys. Yeah. You're close with Darius, and those guys are a great example of that's not intricate music, but that is them, man.
It's them, 100%.
It was authentic.
The reason people heard it, and they were like, well, these are who these guys are. They're a bunch of guys that drink tequila and beer and hang out and play golf with no shoes on. That's what it sounded like.
Yeah.
Fun. Like it sounded like, okay, that's who they are.
It all sounded like this consistent, non-accidental, just this thing they were doing, you know, and that didn't happen for them right away either.
No,
right?
they were older. They were like, I think they were like, they'd been touring for like a decade, like, you know, before it happened, which is another, you know, they weren't giving up though. I mean, like they were like, this is what we do. I mean, like who knows what would happen when they were 35 if they hadn't hit it. They might not be doing it, but they were going for it.
Goo Goo Dolls, what took them 14 years? They were touring 14 years before they hit it in mid-30s.
Yeah. And so I think there's definitely that thing. And I think, but what's again, it's authenticity. You knew when you heard that I was like, what is this? Mm-hmm. Like it sounded like they were doing exactly what they're supposed to be doing. That's why I can't like, and they went for their certain group. It was also back to the time, the man and the time must co-join. That's what happened.
Sure.
That was like they were literally at a time coming off of from Guns N' Roses and you know and Rat and Poison and you know all this terrible glam rock, not Guns N' Roses but the other stuff, and then going into like Nirvana, you know. Temple of the Dog, you know, Soundgarden, and it was like, all right, we got to go to something else, and it was power pop. It came Dave Matthews, and it came Hootie, and that there was a time that happened, but it was authentic, and those are the things that stick around. If you go back through your life, the people that are still your friends from when you were a kid, that are really still your friends, are people that are authentic and they are real, and you value them. Every relationship, and music is a relationship. You have a personal relationship with every listener, and if you want to have a personal relationship with every listener, you better be honest and forthright and true to what you're giving them. It's like a relationship. You have to think of it like that. Like it doesn't mean, but you also have to have a relationship with yourself. You have to be fucking honest, and that is a very hard thing to do. And I only say that from my own experience. I lied to myself for a decade about being the person you would have met. You would have liked me. We would have been friends, but I'm a different human being than I was, 5-10 years ago. We all change, but I had to figure out like, oh man, I'm not doing what I should be doing. I should be traveling. I should be starting Songwriters in Paradise. I should have a big band that I tour around with because I love Joe Cocker and Ray Charles. Lyle Lovett. If I was on stage opening up for Luke Bryan, I'd be fucking miserable. You know what I mean? Like it's like, and the crowd would hate me because I'd be terrible for them. It's like,
and I'd make fun of you.
You would make so much fun of me. But you know what? Country girls shake it for me. I like those boys. They're good guys. But what I'm getting at is, I used to be angry at those people. I used to be like, what the fuck? And then I started realizing, it's like, oh no, they're just doing what they do. That's who they are. They're playing to their base. It's like it's Trumkin, whatever.
Hey, listen, good. I was saying this to somebody the other night, like a guy like Luke Bryan. It's like good on him because he's maxing out his talent in the best of ways. Like he found that thing that he does that is authentic to him, and it's like I think it's real for him.
No, it's real. 100%. Like when Dallas writes those songs, when Rhett writes those songs, those guys. Like I'm genuinely like. That they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. There's nothing wrong with that. Like it's just.
But don't go be Luke Bryan if that's not your thing. That's his thing.
Well, yeah, don't try to be. I'm guessing don't just chase it because it's the shiny thing.
Sure,
is what I'm getting at.
Sure.
And that's and you know that from your own experience. Talking about you don't chase it. Don't do anything for money. Don't do it for for fame. Because do it because it's what you really want to do.
I would say that's the biggest. So I think this is a great time in music. I think there's so much music being made and. The fences of genre and aesthetic have kind of gotten thrown down, and everything's kind of mushing together because of, how the amount of music that's out there now because of streaming, because people can make music, kids can make music on their laptops because they can make it in their garage, whereas we used to need big studios back in the, in the 60s and 70s when all these artists, there were only a few artists because you needed to be in a big studio to do it. That's how you had to spend a lot of money. But I would say one of the negative, I would say maybe the most central negative quality I see young kids, young artists fighting against right now, that I think is a bit of a disease in the middle of like I said, I'm lucky. I have so many artists coming in the studio all the time that are just making amazing music and just talented singers and writers. But I would say the one thing that I see people get tripped up on the most today, is they're forced so heavily to start their own business on their own. You can't just make a couple demos and get signed anymore. You have to start your business as an artist, and you have to make it successful on your own through social media. You're essentially starting a storefront, and you've got to get leverage on your own. You got to start that business on your own before anybody will come up and help you. Now you got to get down the road. So as a result, they get very focused. I find it real like a trap for young artists to get really focused on the means of music.
Meaning, TikTok, social media.
Yeah, all that stuff instead of
the music.
And I get it because once again, they're forced to start
Well,
the
they're
business
signing,
on their own.
the people downtown they're signing people based on their TikTok followers. Not on, I mean, they're literally just getting up and singing a karaoke song, and if they have a million hits, they're like, we're going to sign this person.
So justifiably, you have these young artists and they're thinking, oh, yeah, I don't downplay TikTok, social media, any of that.
And congratulations on your TikTok following. Huge numbers, guys. Jamie has I think there's like what 30 million hits on one thing. Yeah. He was scrambled eggs the other day.
I feel bad even talking about it. It's so successful.
It's so crazy.
Hey folks, thanks for listening. Once again, a big thank you to our sponsor for the podcast, Love Justice International. You can follow them on Instagram. It's at LoveJusticeINTL. Or you can go to their website, lovejustice.ngo, and consider donating. Once again, that is lovejustice.ngo, lovejustice.ngo. Thank you. But the problem is it's so easy to then get focused on the means of the music, the way I get signed, as opposed to the actual, I call it the food of your restaurant. Mm-hmm. At the end of the day, if you're a restaurant and you make amazing food,
you win.
Nobody gives a shit what your stools are like, what the wallpaper is like, what the decor is like.
Korea House, man.
Nobody
fucking
cares.
Korea House.
Yeah.
Korea House, anybody, Nashville, shout out Korea House. Best Korean food you can get, I mean, outside of Seoul. But it's like, and if you go in there, it's a doctor's office. Right, it's the lighting looks like it's crazy. Yeah. And you're like, I don't care. Line out the door.
It doesn't matter. And I think that's when you're focusing on the delivery system and all the extras, you can save yourself so much work and so much time over the years if you will focus on your food. Yeah. Focus on making something authentic and great. Forget all that other stuff. Just literally put your head down, and I promise you, they're going to come looking for you.
Yeah.
They will come
It's hard here because I think that the fame, like we don't understand it. I mean, being honest, I feel like I know I'm not an old man, but I'm definitely an old man, and this is a game. The Nashville Music Row system is a young man's game because of the changes that have happened, and these kids that are coming in now that have grown up on American Idol and The Voice and Masked Singer and all this bullshit that it's just fame happens overnight. So it's not like we talked about this Get Back, the Beatles Peter Jackson thing. It's it's if you guys haven't seen this, please do yourself a favor. It's 6 or 7 hours of footage from them recording the Get Back sessions. It's fucking insane. It's unbelievable to see it. But they're creating something great. They're doing it a different way. They're having to make it up on the spot. They're writing the songs. They were playing them. They're doing and that took a long time. It's like they had to play 10,000 hours in Hamburg or Frankfurt, wherever it was in Germany they played. Like they had to do all these things that were just insane. Mm-hmm. Today, when you have this world where they see Carrie Underwood and whatever year that was go from being a little girl in Oklahoma or whatever to all of a sudden being on television and being a household name, that's what they think everyone is aspiring to be. Not everyone, but a vast majority of these kids, I think, come here because this has become the entertainment mecca for the Southeast. It's become like LA. You move here because you want to be around this, not necessarily because you want to be you want to be around famous people or around the entertainment industry. It doesn't mean that there's not still incredible talent here. It just means that I think a lot of the people have lost focus on the fact that the thing that's going to make it to where somebody's going to listen to your music 10 years from now, 20 years from now, is just going to be great. It's going to be really good music. It's not going to be just...
And as an artist, when you're trying to figure that out, it takes so much to make authentic music. It takes so much in your soul. It takes so much experience. It takes so much conjuring up that voice inside of you to make something that is truly authentic. And you only, as an artist, as a creative, you only have so much bandwidth in your creative soul and in your mind. It's a limited amount of space. Just like, if I'm mixing a track, there's a limited amount of space that I have to work with there. It's not infinite. Mm. And you can only put so much in there. And the things that you choose to put in that track that are big, well, that took up 30% of your space.
Yeah.
Now, if I don't want it to, if it's not that important, then I got to make sure, okay, that's going to only take up 11% of my space because I want something else needs to be more important. So these kids, these young artists are like any creative, they have a limited amount of bandwidth and they're forced now to carry the burden of a whole business and how they break and having to get so far down the river before anybody will jump on and help them that I think it's a real trap to use too much of that bandwidth on the mechanisms of.
It's a catch-22. I can see both sides of it for these kids.
I'm not saying I'm not saying it's not important. I'm saying do it in the right order.
Yeah.
I think, listen, my brother and I designed this bar and we took time picking the paint.
Yeah.
I mean, we took time picking we looked forever for the wallpaper. We laid out, we spent so many nights in here kind of laying things out. So we care about those things. But at the end of the day, we were like, how do you sell beer? How do you sell liquor? And how do we create a place, more importantly, where people feel like they're at home, where people feel good and they want to sit around telling stories. They want to bring their friends here. They want to talk. This is their church. How do we create that church? So I'm not saying don't think about the paint color. Don't think about the trim on the wall. You have to. But I'm saying at the beginning, when you're trying to figure out that voice for young artists or any creators, I'd say it for young producers as well. It's for anybody. Be very, very jealous of that bandwidth, the artistic bandwidth at the beginning. And I'm fully convinced, and I'm an idealist, but at the same time, the older I get, I become a pragmatist. So I don't disregard the pragmatic aspects of breaking and things, but I'm fully convinced that if you kept your head down and you bled for something authentic and you bled for something real and bled to find your artistic voice, that it was true and that you were just maxing out the type of song you write, how good your songs were. I think you could literally do none of that.
And you'll still get, they'll
find you.
Yeah.
They will find you.
I'll look at I'll talk about thinking about Nashville. It's like, it's probably like the city we live in now, the business and everything. I was just thinking of like, who are those people that are, don't really care too much about that and still successful. And I it's like the Dave Cobb world. I'm just saying that the people that he works with, he's very smart in that capacity. Whether or not he's your favorite producer or anything is irrelevant. It's really about the artist that he finds. He finds people that are already there.
They've already done it. Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's almost, it makes his job infinitely easier because he's got Brandy Carlisle and Isbell and Sturgill and Stapleton and Brent Cobb and the laundry list of, he's working with my buddy Channing Wilson now. It's like all these, and they're authentic people that, I don't know if Channing's ever done he knows what TikTok is. You know what I mean? It's funny, but It's like those guys, they don't need that because the music is so good that it takes care of itself. And they've worked years and years and years and years and years on making that the thing that's the thing, the sell it. It sells itself.
Well, you got to make sure you don't use those things as shortcuts because
you'll get found out. It'll only last for a certain amount of time.
Right. And it's very tempting to use them as shortcuts because they can be shortcuts. But once again, I think about the first record I produced. It had a massive bidding war on it. And I just think everybody's like, oh, there's so many hits on this album. She's going to be the next big thing, and I think, and it didn't end up doing that. And I kind of think, I'm so glad it didn't because that would have been a shortcut. I was not any good yet. I wasn't good enough to experience that success. And that caused me to have to get it the right way.
Oh, I was fucking horrible until recently. I'm still horrible now, but I was really horrible back then. And I go, man, I'm glad I didn't have any of these things. I would have thought, because you have to really.
You don't want to get faked out.
You have to look at yourself and be like, oh, why am I not? I'm like, oh, I'm not actually that good. I'm good enough to fake. I'm better than 95% of the people, but I need to be better than 99% of the people.
Yeah.
And it's and that's, and then at what I like to do. And I think that is a true statement because in this town, and it's going to sound like such a negative, and I don't really mean it that way. It's more of just it's like a warning, like a label warning, like on a don't smoke cigars because it'll give you cancer type of thing.
Bro, side note, I am jacked up
right
now because I got.
Well, you got
coffee, and that. I don't smoke cigars, and that cigar has lit me up.
That's a light one, man.
I'm talking.
Yeah.
way too fast.
No, you're doing great.
And way,
I appreciate this.
I'm lit. So thank you for that.
Yeah. See, you have to drink. I got you high anyway. So, what I was going to say is, and this is like a disclaimer about this. I don't mean this, but the truth of the matter is that because those A&R people and those guys that are in town, they have to make a living. They have to hit numbers. It's part of what they do. So the music has to be almost secondary for most of them, or even way down the list of the quality of the music. If it sells, it sells, right? So I think it's important for the songwriter, producer, and performer or artist to understand that it took me a long time to figure this out, because I'm from a small town. So my little community of people, man, I'm still friends with those people. I grew up with them. Like, so I have a real affection. If I'm a friend with somebody, if I'm somebody's friend, I am their friend. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm really their friend. It's not based on what they can do for me, but of course there's always, a trade-off in any relationship, no matter what it is. But I don't mean that's not what I'm after. But in this town, you have to remember, in the music business in general, the people don't give a fuck about you. I don't mean the listeners. I mean, the people they can pretend that they do, but I have a laundry list, as you do, of people that have been either friends of yourself or mine, or just if I watch other artists that are just patted on the back, greatest thing in the world, greatest thing. And the minute that it doesn't work anymore for their spreadsheet, well, they have to move on.
They're doing a job.
They're doing their job. So that's an important thing to remember. And it's not even, like I said, it's not that they're all evil. It's just that the artists and the writers need to understand that and recognize that and go and really kind of have a mental fortitude and make themselves tough enough to understand that that's part of this game.
Well, stay focused on your thing.
Yes.
Stay focused. Don't get distracted by the pats on the back or stay focused.
Because that will go away.
It will go away.
And so, and recognizing that is very important. And it's like I said, this isn't to demify all the people here. It's just something that young artists and writers and people that are just moving here need to understand, because it is quite the kick in the gut when it happens. It's happened to me. It's happened when you recognize, you go, oh shit, they don't actually care so much. They might like me, like not like they're going to be rude to me if they see me out, but I'm no longer the shiny thing. That happens. So, and to really make sure that the people you surround yourself with maybe aren't necessarily all those people. You're going to have some of those people in your life, just the way it works. But it's just an important thing that I think a lot of people here get super bummed out about. They don't understand. I'm like, it's business.
Yeah, but even the ironic thing is, and this is why it's not indemnifying to the industry part of music. The people in the industry that are the kind of the structure that allows us to kind of make money at this thing we love, they would love nothing more than to have more authentic artists.
Yeah.
So if you stay by not allowing the pat on the back to distract you too much, by not getting distracted too much by, what they're asking you to create, and staying focused on what you can create to be a more authentic creative, an artist, a producer, a writer, whatever that is, the people in the industry are going to fucking love that. They're going to love it. It makes their job easy. The more authentic, creative people.
The more of an artist you are, they're going to love it. Another disclaimer. If all you want to do is be famous and hopefully get rich really quick, just don't listen to anything else or anything that Jamie and I are saying. I'm talking about people that I can only talk about myself, where I want to do this forever, and I want to be able to release stuff that it doesn't matter if it wins Grammys or anything. I want it to be something I'm proud of, and so for me, it's very focused on making great, friends, memories, experiences, hopefully songs, hopefully albums, hopefully shows, doing things that really connect. I want a connection, and I think in the end, that's all we really want is connect with people, and everyone has a different viewpoint on that. I think one thing that I like about what you're doing with the podcast is that you're trying to bring people in that have been here for a while, have varying degrees of success, but all also have an understanding of, a different understanding of the same process. Mm-hmm. And it's helpful, because when I was a kid and when you were a kid, when we were coming here, we didn't have this kind of shit. We couldn't listen to somebody talk, it's like, if people don't know who the fuck I am, that's fine. It's like, you can, Wikipedia, you can look things up, but it's like, it's still, you have to respect the fact. I always respected somebody that told me they had been here when I got here in 2002 or 2001, 2002, that they'd been here for 20 years. Yeah. That meant I wanted to listen. I wanted to know something, because I was like, well, okay, you survived here. Because guess what? Like, I remember when I first got here, and you may remember this. When did you get here?
2000.
2000. So I remember there was these two songwriters. I can't remember their names right now, but Mark something. They had a little book. It was a little book, and it was like in Understanding Music Row or something. It was a little book. They sold it to Bluebird. They sold it to different places when there was nothing around here, you know. And one of the things in it was like there's 100,000 people back in the 2000 or whatever that move here a year to play music. Within 6 months, 9,000 of them are gone. Within 12 months, 99,000 of them are gone. Within a year, 99,900 of them are gone. You know, and that's really kind of what happens here. It's like, so this is like kind of like a behind the curtain of like, how do you exist here long enough to figure out what it is you're trying to do? And you might have maybe your dad's an artist, and so you're going to get ushered in the door. But most of us don't have that. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So I think it's valuable to hear this stuff. I wish when I was a kid I would have had more, because I had that little fucking book that was about 40 pages long, maybe by some drunk songwriters I met it somewhere, at Debbie Champion's writers round down whatever the Music Row, the Best Western, So it's just a different world, and nowadays if you think there was 100,000 in 2000 that moved here, there's probably 1 million now that move here. And so because every kid from every southeastern school moves here, after they graduate. So.
I remember them telling me when I was first jumping on sessions, I remember the guys that were kind of the legends. When I walk in a session, I'd read in the liner notes these guys' names. Yeah, so I was sitting on the keyboard, just kind of the young kid that was just glad to be there. And I remember them telling me, hey, if you can make it 10 years here, if you're still here in 10 years, you pass the test. Yeah. And that in their mind, it was like.
That's the first question. Anyone ask you when you're here, how long you been here? Mm-hmm. I still do it now. We'll walk in the bar and there'll be some kid talking, if it'll be like talking to you or me or whatever, and be like, I'll be like, oh, cool, man, how long you been here? Because I definitively, there's a definitive understanding of what that means. They tell me a year, I'm like, oh, cool. They tell me a month, I'm like, oh, shit. They tell me 3 years, I'm like, all right. Yeah. It's like 10 years, I'm like, oh, okay. So. Right,
it's just something, to be able to continue to do it, I think you can stay here for a few years on some shortcuts, but for you to stay here and do it with some longevity, you have to get there the right way. I guess you don't have to, but there are exceptions.
Yeah, there's exceptions because you might maybe what you're doing at the time is the hot thing for a year or two. It's like a fad. It's like, mom jeans, whatever. I don't know. Like, what I mean? Whatever, fuck, but
even I even think of a lot of artists that we might, not love the music. When Hootie stuff came out, that's not smart music. I didn't love that music, whatever. But to me, even the people that you may not love or think it's the most creative music, they're typically going back to the hard work thing. They typically, if they're doing it for a long time and they're experiencing, they're hard workers.
Don't give up.
I mean, even the Florida Georgia Line boys. I mean, say what you want. That's a good example because a lot of people just saw them as a cliche. Those boys worked their asses off.
Yeah, they weren't afraid to work, and they got a good team. And the other thing is get a good team around you of people that, like, if that's what they wanted to be, they got the best of the best for what that was. I mean, they got Rodney Clawson and guys that are just masters at their craft, and I think that's, I keep saying this, but as I've gotten older, I'm not as. It's great. I'm not as jaded as I was in a prior life because I started recognizing, oh, wait a second, he's a fucking master at that. I don't even care about that. That wouldn't even mean success for me. Figure out once again, what's your version of success? Like if Mike over here is, he's fucking badass producer and guitar, or musician. So like if what I think successful, he might be like, well, that's okay, that's cool, I guess. It fucking sucks, that's not as good as, and vice versa. It's just the way the world works. So understanding who you are and then really focusing on that goalpost, it's just like anything else. It's like, do what you do and do it very, very, very well. Fender guitars make Telecasters, Stratocasters really, really great. They're not out there trying to make, I don't know, whatever, pianos, whatever it is. There's probably a Fender piano, I don't know. But it's not something what they do is they know exactly what it is they do. So do what you do, man. Do it well, like you do, Jamie, like, a podcaster now. Look at this motherfucker.
Yeah, absolutely, man.
All right, so hey, we're going to eat. Like, what do you think? I think it's time to eat?
Man, I tell you what, after all the steak I ate last night.
Now you're going to eat with me. I don't care if you eat with me or not. But
this might be my detox day. I was thinking I'm going to put a lot of green stuff in my gut today, and I've not started off on a great note, smoking a cigar and drinking coffee. But
no, but I do this. I do this because I can hang, talk. We do this at the house. Like I do this, and I don't drink.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. It's
Right,
like
it's true.
it keeps you going, and it's like, and these are, you don't inhale it, so of all the vices, it's not exactly but I just
Well, it's been fun, PD.
it's always fun, man. Good to see you, buddy.
What I love about you, man, among a lot of things, is I just think you know what your thing is, man, and you found that and you do it, and along with. I just think you've made a real unique mark in Nashville because you haven't done it the way everybody else has done it. And I love that. And I think you've accrued a lot of wisdom because you didn't take that easy path.
Well, I figured out I couldn't do it the normal way because I wasn't going to be.
No,
I'm saying, but that's a good thing to figure out. It's like
Sure.
Man, it's like these guys aren't going to clamor over putting me on their label because I'm not that thing. That's not me. It's like, it's not that I shouldn't chase that. I shouldn't chase and that's really important. It's as important to know what it is you're good at as what you're not good at. And
whatever it takes to kind of lead you to that authentic spot. Sometimes it is heartbreak, or it is self-awareness that hurts, or whatever it is. But it always gets you if you're honest with yourself and truly blocking out all the the pats on the back, the things that kind of can distract you, then you do typically, however you get there, you come back to an authentic spot. Anyway, I think you've done that really well. I also think that because of that wisdom, you kind of afforded that, you've been able to coach up a lot of people, these young artists in town, and
I like connecting people like you. You like connecting people. What you're doing with this podcast, you're connecting people to people they would not have access to, or asking insightful questions, or just a conversation, and it's just connecting. That's one thing that I really enjoy doing, and I love talking to people. I love learning stuff about people. I enjoy that, and I think that's really probably one of the things I do very, very well is bring people to get like-minded people to get meet. Same thing with you. We'll meet somebody like, hey, this is so-and-so, and I know that if you introduce me to them, like I said earlier, that's my person. I want to talk to that person, and vice versa. That's what I want to do. I mean, I think I exist on the fringes.
Yeah. Well, listen, you help a lot of people be successful, and I've always told everybody about you. You're never going to outgive PD. It's like you take care of people, and you really want to help people. I mean, that's a big part of your calling, I think, is your destiny, is help people get to where they want to go. So I love that, man. I aspire to that in my life too. Help people get to where they want to go. How do you, my destiny is probably helping others achieve their destiny.
It feels better to give than to take.
Yeah. Good. Yeah. Well, thank you for coming, man.
Love it, man.
I appreciate it. And
we'll do it again. I'll bring you a better cigar next time.
No, that was a good one. All right, folks. Thanks for listening. Appreciate anytime you turn it on and take a listen to anything we have to say. See you next time.